So, specific performance, what the heck does that mean in a real estate agreement or agreement to buy and sell or contract to buy and sell? And how does that relate to default? What if the buyer defaults in the transaction or the seller defaults in the transaction? Well, depends if you're the buyer or you're the seller and how that affects you and what recourse you may have. So that's the topic of our video today. We'll get into it in just a bit. I'll be right back. Hey, it's Brian Chandler with Remax Alliance in Parker, Colorado. Hope everything's going well with you guys today. Well, the topic of today's conversation is default, specific performance. What happens if a buyer or seller defaults? Before we get into that, just want to remind you, take a look at briansells.us. This is one of my websites, and you get information on some of the local areas here, as well as doing property searches, home evaluations, market updates, and such, and various services that we can provide for you, including relocation and others as well. So let's get into the contract. So agreement to buy and sell, contract to buy and sell, real estate contract, whatever you want to call it. There is a term called specific performance. So what is that? So that comes into play when a buyer or seller does not perform the duties they're supposed to perform or what they've agreed to perform. So as an example, let's say a seller is supposed to provide you with certain documentation by a certain date, by our dates and deadline graph, as I showed you once before. Then they did not perform. They're in violation and breach of the contract. So you can actually try to terminate the contract, or you can try to force the seller to still sell the home to you legally through a term or through a method called specific performance. So as an example, let's say what happens if here the seller is in default. Buyer may elect to treat this contract as canceled, which I mentioned, in which case all the earnest money received will be returned to the buyer, and buyer may recover damages that may be proper. So that means you can actually go beyond getting your money back and pursue legally other damages that you might be able to prove against the seller. Or you may elect to treat the contract as being in full force, even though the seller defaulted, and in effect, and the buyer has the right to specific performance or damages or both. So you can actually force the seller to still try to sell to you and also get damages above and beyond either or. So if you are the buyer and you default, well, here's what specific performance means there. The seller may elect to cancel the contract. Now, specific performance may mean something you're supposed to do, providing documentation, getting loan application in, getting loan approval by a certain date, providing verification of employment or deposit, things that are going to be contractually obligated to you. So the seller can now keep your earnest money deposit, and you agree the earnest money is not a penalty, and the parties agree the amount is fair and reasonable, but the seller may still recover additional damages as may be proper. So if you get way down the line and you do not perform and do what you're supposed to do 30 days into the transaction, and the seller wants to cancel it, he can do so and then still go after you as a buyer for additional damages that he might be able to prove. The seller may also elect to treat the contract as being in full force, just like you did as a buyer, and the seller has the right to specific performance or damages or both. So he can still try to force you to buy the home. Let's say for some reason you did not want to buy the home anymore. You changed your mind. You want to figure a way out. You figure, let's go ahead and do this and not buy the house. Well, the seller can still try to force you to buy the house based on your situation and or go after you for damages or both. So that is what specific performance means in a real estate contract and how it relates to default of a buyer or seller. So I hope this information was helpful to you. Subscribe down below and click the bell so you'll get notified when I put up more videos. Just trying to provide you guys with as much help as possible. feel free to call me directly anytime. I don't care where you're located. If you need some help, you want a suggestion, you want some information, you want an opinion, just reach out, call Brian Chandler here in Colorado. Happy to help you the best I can. So until next time, it's Brian checking out. Take care. See you later.